Hey, it's GStanley with the Collector Car Podcast. For this episode, I'm going to share with you 25 incredible bargains that just happened. Okay, like I said, for this episode, I'm going to cover 25 cars that just sold that were incredible bargains. Now, for this episode, I took information, the results from the 4 auctions that occurred for the big auction houses for October. So this would be RM Sotheby's Hershey sale, it would be Mecum's Chattanooga sale, Barrett Jackson's Houston sale, and Broad Arrow's Jim Taylor sale. So why am I doing this episode? Well, really, it's because sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, but I get discouraged hearing about all these incredible sales going on for incredible prices because I just want a nice little 65 fastback Mustang, something that is affordable, fun, and yeah, maybe I'll appreciate a little bit in the future. So I get depressed at times when I hear these record sales. I'm happy as a clam for my clients because I want to get the best results possible for them. But sometimes it's a little disheartening. So there was one car in particular that I was floored how much it sold for. Shocking. And I'll give that example, but you have to stay until the end of this podcast to hear exactly what it sold for and compare it to the estimate. That car was a 1954 Buick Roadmaster convertible, which is actually one of the 3 cars I would pick for my garage if I could only have 3 cars in the world. So just so you know, one of them would be that. One of them would be a 1965 Shelby GT350, and then the last one would have to be a big Duesenberg. I don't know. Maybe I need more cars, like a Porsche 911. Yeah, I might need more than that. All right, let's say 4. All right, so that car is the one that made me want to do an episode about bargains. Now, there's a lot of stuff I have to cover before I actually get to the numbers, because this is a little hard to pull together. One thing I want to share off right up front, and I'll probably do a special podcast episode on this, in that if you're trying to sell a car, it's incredibly important to pick the right auction house. Now, I don't want to pick on any one auction house above another, but I do want to get some real world examples where I have dug into the numbers as a consultant for different clients, and I was kind of shocked by some of the results. Now, everybody knows Barrett Jackson. They can sell the big high dollar cars such as a Mercedes Gullwing, but that's not where I would take that car. I would take my Resto Mod there. I mean, if you look at their run rate of all the cars that sold, let's see, for their last sale, which was in Houston, you know, I didn't crunch the numbers, but at least 60% of the cars had the word custom or replica or Pro Street or Resto Mod in their title. So, you know what? That's a great place to take those cars because that's where their client base is. So you really got to look at that. Now, when I think of Mecum, I think of muscle cars, pony cars, sports cars. And I also think about high-turn, lower-dollar cars. For example, I dug into their Mecum Kissimmee sale. Now, this is going to sound bad, but it really is what it is. It's like the Manheim of collector car auctions. Manheim is strictly about selling cars at wholesale, used cars. Well, Mecum Kissimmee can kind of feel that way because they take everything and anything. I mean, they had over 3,000 cars in January's sale. I counted 3,325 based on the Excel spreadsheet I was able to download from their website, which is very handy. And I wanted to look at the European cars, say pre-1971, because I'll see those cars at Mecum, and I'm like, why are these cars being sold here? And when I looked at that, specifically at the Kissimmee sale, of those over 3,000 cars, only 1.9% of the offerings were pre-1971 European cars. And of those cars, they sold at a rate of less than 73% sale-through rate. Just for perspective, a general rate of success, if an auction house clears over 85%, that's considered a really good sale. European offerings at the Kissimmee sale under 72% success rate selling. So who knows if where those fell within the estimate. And from that perspective, they had 690 cars that sold for under 20 grand and 231 cars that sold for under 10 grand. So there was a lot of stuff that, you know what, if you're lucky, there was probably some decent entry level cars there. The European cars that were over 1971, old or newer, they were just basically used cars. 2006. Little small Mercedes convertibles or Audis or whatever. So, in this example for Mecum, especially Kissimmee, I would not take anything such as a 275 GTB Ferrari, 300 SLs, Bugattis, that type of stuff. So, have to be very wise in where and when you place your car for sale. All right. Let's go into some of the strategies here. So I wanted to make a note on the estimate. So for this episode, how did I define what was a good deal or not? Now, if there was an estimate provided, so if the auction house posted an estimate and I could research that estimate in the results, which was for RM, Sotheby's, and Broad Arrow, I compared the hammer price to the lowest estimate. Now, when I pull up the information on the screen here, you'll see my numbers differ slightly from the numbers I'm showing you, because the numbers that are public after the auction include the 10% buyer's premium or 10 or 12.5%, which is what Broad Arrow was charging in their results. The estimates do not include that. So if I'm going to a potential client, I'm saying your car, we think it's going to sell between $30,000 and $40,000. If it hammers for $33,000 with a 10% buyer's commission, that doesn't go in their pocket, that extra 10%. They get the $30,000. So that's why there's a slight difference between what you might see on the screen and the numbers I'm quoting. Another thing about the estimates are you can't always put 100% of the value in the estimates. There's strategical reasons why some estimates may not be on the perfect. A couple examples would be is if you're consigning a collection of cars and maybe the consignor doesn't think your estimates are realistic, but you want to get the collection. So maybe it's more of a, hey, we think it's going to sell for $50,000. You will only do the estimate of 60 to 80 or whatever it might be. The auction house might be dead on with what they are saying it's going to sell for, but they will go ahead and put a slightly higher estimate on to make the client happy, and everybody's in agreement. But then they have that real world snapshot of, we think it's going to sell for less. Be prepared for that, and hopefully you'll accept the offer. Another thing is sometimes it's really hard to make the estimates accurate. I know at RM Sotheby's Monterey sale, there was quite a few cars that fell below estimate, but it was because these were cars that were pretty much one of one, or they had bodywork that was special or a history that was super special. And these cars had not been on the auction channel or format for 20, 30 years. So how do you price that? I mean, there aren't any valuation guides for some of these really, really special high-end cars. So that can be difficult as well. And then also sometimes there's a strategy. I had this situation where I was approached with a 1955 Porsche Speedster barn find. And it was horrible. It was the A-frames were busted, the windows were missing, the seats were out. Had the original engine. It was out of the car. It was had rust. It wasn't. I mean, the floorboards were rusted out. I mean, it was just absolutely horrendous. Now people go nuts for that kind of stuff. Original matching numbers engine. It was factory silver with red interior. I did not get the sale because someone came in with a pile of cash. And my strategy would be, let's put a realistic, maybe a slightly low estimate on it. Let's say 50 to, 75 grand. You figure in mint shape, these cars are $250,000, $300,000, and you factor in the cost of a restoration. So the estimate would have been pretty accurate. But the Porsche file is seeing a Speedster with the specs I just mentioned with an estimate of 45 to 65 grand or whatever, 50 to 75 grand. They probably would have gone nuts on it. It had to be, it would have had to have been no reserve. And that thing could have sold for $150,000. So that would have been a big miss, but that's kind of where you want to get it out there, what might be perceived as a bargain. Get everybody excited about it and see if it goes really well. In this particular scenario, there were like 5 or 6 siblings that had to make a decision, and they had a cash hand in offer offer in hand that was really good, and I told them just take the offer. So that's another thing. So a lot to cover here. The other thing is for Mecum and Barrett, they did not have any estimates. Now, I don't know that Barrett ever does estimates because everything's sold at no reserve. Mecum usually has estimates posted prior, but it looks like they take the estimates away afterwards. So in these scenarios, I used Haggerty's number 2 valuations for these cars. Now, obviously, there could be a big sway there. I mean, every car looks great in pictures, so I did my best. Most of the cars seem to be 3 plus, 2, 2 minus, based on the pictures I saw. So there could be a big swing there as well. But I did my best. So this is for entertainment purposes only. Oh, the other note I want to say is if you have a no reserve sale, really the estimates should be as accurate as possible. And hopefully your estimates fall right in the middle. So that's something that came into huge play here with the Broad Arrow collection, because that entire sale was no reserve except for one car, a Jaguar D-Type, I believe, that did not sell. So that is where the bargains can really be found. Stay until the end because I'll give you some tips for finding that future bargain by a couple of the big parameters I noticed. Now, one car I did want to call out here, I'm going to throw this picture up. This wasn't a tremendous sale, but I think it was a tremendous bargain. So for full transparency, this is a 1936 Ford Phaeton. I consigned this car to our Hershey sale, and it is absolutely gorgeous. Now, Phaeton is a 4-door convertible that does not have windows in the doors, and in this picture you will see it does have the fabric inserts, which apparently is very, very expensive. This car is stunning. This car had like $300,000 worth of receipts from a previous owner who had the restoration done. And this is a car you could drive right onto a concourse show field and win. I mean, it is just absolutely stunning. And I put the estimate, now remember, the money spent was around $300,000, not by the guy who I consigned it for, but by a previous owner. And I put the estimate at $45,000 to $50,000 because that's what they're worth, unfortunately, right now. It goes to the old saying of, have someone else do the restoration and you reap the rewards, unfortunately. So I put the estimate at $45,000 to $55,000. It was the best one there. All the car specialists for Arm Sotheby's just couldn't believe how nice this car was. And there were 3 or 4 36 Ford Phaetons there. By far the nicest one. I was hoping it would hit $65,000. It was put in at no reserve, and it hit right dead center of my estimate. Estimate was $45,000 to $55,000. It hit right at $50,000. So the owner was fine. He was happy. He understood what this car was worth today, and thankfully he did not have that money in it. A previous owner did. So while this wasn't the biggest bargain from a strict dollar perspective, I think it was the best deal out there because, you might not ever find a nicer one, and to find one for this price is just kind of crazy. So, all right. Well, we're going to start with the top 25 biggest bargains I found. Ones I did not include, there were quite a few of these from the Broad Arrow sale. They were no reserve, and they were kind of like barn finds. Some of them were 40s and 50s pickup trucks and other vehicles that looked like they were kind of left out in the field and they rusted. A total project. But there were a few where the estimate was like $5,000 to $8,000, and they sold for $100. So for a percent basis, those would have been the highest, the biggest bargains, because that's like a 90% savings. But I didn't include those because they weren't driving cars, is the main reason I did not include those. All right, let's go to the first one here, number 25. All right, this is from Barrett-Jackson, Houston. Now, again, this one is against number 2 Haggerty rating. The value would be $42,000. This one was no reserve, and it sold for $39,000. So not a huge bargain, $3,000, 7.1% savings on that car. The next one I'm going to is again from Barrett-Jackson. Now, this one is, a Pontiac GTO. These have been appreciating quite a bit in the marketplace, and it was unfortunate. I mean, it was great for the buyer to see this one sell so low. Number 2 value is $44,700. The hammer price on this was $38,000. So 15% savings. You then factor in the 10% buyer's premium, so you're saving a little bit, not a ton. All right, the next one I'm going to pick. This one is actually one of our top 7 from dollar misses. From a percent perspective, it was 16.9%. This is a beautiful car. So this was from RM Sotheby's Hershey sale. Honestly, it was a really good sale. I had a hard time finding some bargains, but I wanted to be sure I did mention RM Sotheby's from a bargain perspective. But this was a 1914 Thomas Model K 690 flyabout. So the percent difference wasn't huge. Like I said, 17%. But this is a big dollar car. Let's see, the low estimate on this car was 650 grand, and it sold for 540 grand. So it missed the low estimate by $110,000. So that was a big miss from a dollar perspective. But this is one of those cars, like, how do you value it? A 1914 Thomas Model flyabout. There's not a ton of them out there. So you know what? You can kind of take a swing at it and do the best you can. But like I said, this was one of our big misses from a dollar perspective. I'm doing the top 10 there, and that was this. I'm sorry, the top 7, and this was number 7. All right. Next, number 22, the biggest deal was, now this one was from Mecum. Again, they didn't provide an estimate. So this is a 1960 Austin Healey 3000 Mark I Roadster. Number 2 value is $59,200, and this one is a gorgeous color combo here. Pacific green with ivy top, I don't want to say coves, but the lower half of the side panel, in black interior. Beautiful color combination. So $59,200 is the number 2 value. This one sold for $48,000, so you're talking about a 19% less than number 2 value. And then we're going back to Arm Sotheby's here. Now this is another cool car, European car here. This is a 1970 Mercedes-Benz 280 SE 3.5 liter sunroof coupe. So pretty rare because of the sunroof coupe. Nice, desirable. Estimate was 100 to 125. Let's see, and this one sold for $80,000. So that's a 20%, $20,000 miss from a low estimate. So very, very cool car. Pretty colors too, like a blue with the tan interior. All right, next. This one is a little bit of a surprise. And you've heard me talk about this car a lot lately. 2011 Cadillac CTS-V wagon. This one only had 8,711 miles. Kind of a silver with probably a black interior. Low mileage. Now, the biggest ding on this car is that it's an automatic. Now, if this was one of the rare 6-speeds, this thing truly would have gone nuts. Let's see, number 2 value is $79,000, and it sold for $63,000. A little bit over a 20% miss on that one, so 20% bargain. All right, next one is from R.M. Sotheby's Hershey. This is our number 18 car, 1955 Ford. Oops, where'd it go? There we go. 1955 Ford Country sedan. The low estimate was $50,000, and it sold for $36,000. So that's let's see, what is that? A 28% savings below low estimate. And then we're going to, I skipped one. I'm sorry. That's why I'm having problems here. I skipped one. I skipped from Barrett Jackson, a Toyota FJ. All right, so 1965 Toyota Land Cruiser hardtop, not the soft top. Now, I don't know why, but in Hagerty's database, they did not have a 1965 Land Cruiser valuation available. But since it was pretty much unchanged, I used the 1968 valuation data. And number 2 value is $50,400. This one sold for $40,000. That's a little bit over 20% under low estimate. And now here's the first Ferrari from Mecum. Like I said, I always wonder why people sell their European cars at Mecum, but it is what it is. All right, this is a 1999 Ferrari F355 Spider. This one did have a reserve. Number 2 value is $133,000. This one hammered sold at $90,000. Black on black, which I have to imagine adds value, 26,000 miles. And that is $43,000 under number 2 value. So that's 32% below number 2 value. And Barrett, headed back over to Barrett Jackson. This one was, we're getting big here. And just to let you know, the number 1 car that I have on this list was 90% off of the low estimate. All right, for this one, we have a 2008 Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren Roadster. I love these cars. This is our 6th biggest miss from a dollar perspective. This one did not have a reserve. Number 2 value, $409,000. And this one hammered sold for $275,000. Ouch. That hurt. All right, let's see. So that difference there is $134,000, 33% under number 2 value for this car. All right, now this next one is a biggie. It's our number 15 from a percent perspective, missing the low estimate. From a dollar perspective, it's actually our number 2 miss. So it tells you it's a big one. All right, this one came from the Broad Arrow Jim Taylor sale. 1962 Aston Martin DB4, no reserve. Low estimate was $450,000, and it sold for $300,000. And that's a $150,000 miss, 33.3% below low estimate. If you're watching the screen right now, it does say $335,000. That includes the 12.5% buyer's premium I mentioned earlier. All right, next, it's another Broad Arrow sale, number 14 from the bargain list, and it's actually our number 3 car when it comes to dollar miss. 1936 Bugatti Type 57, beautiful car, two-tone blue, dark blue, light blue. The estimate on this one, the low estimate again was $450,000, sold for $300,000, $150,000 miss, same exact miss as the DB4. All right, now we're going to move over to Barrett-Jackson. Again, you know, someone's selling a factory Porsche at Barrett-Jackson that hasn't been resto modded. So, you know, you got to expect what you expect. This one is a 1994 Porsche 911 Carrera 2 Cabriolet, no reserve, sold for, number 2 value is $69,100. This one sold for $46,000, 33% under number 2 condition. Yeah, if you want a really cheap price on a Porsche, go to Mecum or go to Barrett-Jackson. All right, next from Mecum Chattanooga. This was a big sale. Let's see. 1978 Ferrari 308 GTS. This one did have a reserve. The number 2 value is $128,000. It sold for $85,000. $43,000 miss. 33.6% underneath number 2 value. All right, we're going to head back to RM Sotheby's for our number 11 car for the greatest bargains. This is same car as mine, a 1936 Ford Model 68 Cabriolet. This one is a not, in my mind, attractive brown with a pretty attractive brown interior. Colors do mean a lot. The estimate on this one, the low estimate was $60,000. For some reason, they had a higher estimate than I did, and it hammered for $37,500. That's a $22,500 miss, 38% under the low estimate. All right, now we're into the top 10 from the perspective of the best bargains, and we're headed back over to the Jim Taylor collection. This is a 1961 Aston Martin DB4. This was also one of our biggest dollar misses. So $350,000 low estimate. It sold for $200,000, 42.9% underneath the low estimate. Now this one, I didn't look into this one too closely, but I don't know that that's a factory color on this car. It looks almost like a robin's egg blue. Maybe it is. It would be beautiful if it was. And then it looks like either it's unrestored or it has quite a bit of patina, especially on the wire wheels, which may have kept this price slightly soft. So this was our number 4 biggest dollar miss when it comes strictly from a dollar perspective. And then we are going to stay over at the Jim Taylor collection with this 1987, another Aston Martin, 1987 Aston Martin V8 Volante. This thing is gorgeous. I love these. Even though it's an 80s car, I think it's pretty awesome. $300,000 low estimate, and it sold for $165,000, $135,000 under the low estimate. That's a 45% miss of low estimate. Now, before you feel bad for the owners of these cars, a lot of times, especially when it's a new auction company that's trying to make a wave in the business, they might have had a guarantee number on all these cars. And so if there was a loss, it might have been the auction house taking the loss. I don't know that for sure. I will say, they've only had 2 auctions, and this being their second one, they've done an incredible job. Just unbelievable. Even just to have your second auction being, I don't know, $22 million worth of cars at no reserve is quite the feat. So hats off to them for really coming out of the gate strong. All right, next we're going back to Mecum. This is a 1987 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. Now this one was quite the bargain. It was, let's see, number 2 value is $15,600. This one sold for $8,000. So you're talking $7,600 difference, 49% below number 2 value. That one can be kind of a harder read. I mean, the car looks great in pictures. Maybe it was a number 3 car, but in the pictures, it looks like a number 2 car. All right, headed back over to Barrett-Jackson. So now this is our number 7, another Porsche at Barrett-Jackson. I'm telling you, go to Barrett-Jackson or Mecum to get your Porsche deals, your European car deals. Let's see, 1998 Porsche 911 Carrera Cabriolet. Number 2 value, $72,400. And now get this, it sold for $37,000, a $50,000 miss. That's almost 58% under number 2 value. Now, to be fair, as I'm looking at these pictures, as they're flipping across the screen here, that might be a number 3 car. So the gap might not be as big. But, again, this is for entertainment purposes only. All right, we are back for another Porsche, but this time we are going to Mecum again. 1983 Porsche 911 Carrera. This is our number 6 car in the list. Let's see. Number 2 value, $87,000. This one hammered sold for $37,000. $50,000 under number 2 value, 58% again underneath the number 2 value. All right, now we're getting into some big ones here. The top 5. Number 5 is, again, from Broad Arrow. Let's see, 2006 Ferrari 599 GTB. It's a lot. It's got a lot of decals from the Pan American 20,000 race. So a lot of decals. That probably hurt it a little bit. It loses the beautiful flowing lines of the Ferrari being covered up by racing decals. The low estimate on this one was $450,000. It hammered sold, get this, for $190,000. So $260,000 underneath the low estimate. That's 57.8%. That is just painful, honestly. And that is actually our number 1 difference from a dollar perspective versus the low estimate, the 2006 Ferrari 599. All right, we are back to RM Sotheby's for the number 4 car with the biggest bargain deal here. 1957 Jaguar Mark 8. Now this one did have a reserve. The low estimate was $60,000, and this sucker sold for $22,500. It's black. It's got maroon interior. It is a beautiful style. Now, from what I understand, these cars are a little hard to keep up with just because a lot of the parts are not reproduced, at least from a trim perspective. I was actually just talking to someone today. He was looking for a Mark 8. I don't know that he knew this one was available. So big miss on this one, 62.5%. So this seems like an absolute screaming deal, but it's our number 4 car. It's not our number 1 car. So stay tuned here. We've got 3 more to go. All right, number 3. Now this is the car actually made me want to do this podcast episode. This is the 1954 Buick Roadmaster convertible prototype. So what's crazy about this, like I said, I'd love to have a Buick Roadmaster. It's yellow on top, dark red on bottom. It's got a red interior. It is just really, really beautiful. And the estimate on this one was $120,000, I think it was to $160,000, and it sold for $44,000. Oh, I wish I was in the room for this one. That's $76,000 under low estimate. I mean, can you imagine that? Getting a Roadmaster convertible, period, for $44,000. But the fact that it's the prototype, I mean, I think the estimate was right on. It's just the buyers were not in the room. And I'll go into a minute as far as my thoughts on why this sold for that cheap. Anyways, so that was just shocking. It's just an absolutely gorgeous car. I mean, everything about the car, it should have sold probably at the high end of that estimate if I had to guess. I mean, 53 Roadmaster convertibles are selling around 80 to 100, maybe 110. So it seemed right on. All right, two more, and these are pretty interesting. Again, from Broad Arrow, this 1925 Ario Speedwagon heavy duty Oberchain Boyer fire truck. Now the fire trucks really suffered for some reason. The estimate on this one wasn't much, $20,000, like $20,000 to $30,000. $20,000 was the low estimate. This thing hammered for less than $3,500, $3,250. So that means it missed the low estimate by $16,750. I used this one and the next one because they seem to be running driving examples. So that's an 83.8% miss. And the number one miss from a percentage perspective, the number $1 miss, now remember, was the 2006 Ferrari 599. Number one miss, the biggest bargain in October, based on what I researched, and there's not a picture because it's no longer on the website for some reason, is Broad Arrow's 1935 Ford Model BB. Now this one, the estimate was $60,000 to I think $70,000. The low estimate was $60,000. So I have to believe it was a running driving truck or Model BB, and it sold for $6,000. So it just seemed like, man, what a bargain! $6,000, even with the 10%, 12.5% on top of that. The difference from the low estimate was $54,000. 90% savings on that based on that estimate. So really nuts. And I guess, why did some of these cars sell for so cheap? Well, I guess a couple reasons why. First, I think some of the cars were at the wrong auction. I think that's a great example with the Porsches from Barrett-Jackson and the Ferraris from Mecum. I think, at least in the Broad Arrow perspective, I mean, it's an incredible Herculean effort they made, and they've successfully had their second auction conducted. They have a third one coming up. But I think you just cannot create a global audience that fast. And I think that's one of the reasons. You just cannot expand your base no matter how good you are. It just doesn't seem to be possible or realistic. The other thing is it was an auction that was on site. And so I know when you have it on site, you should expect the results possibly to be a little softer than if it was at a Monterey, a Scottsdale, or Amelia Island. Because at those big events like that, all the buyers are in the room. If they start seeing these things selling for $6,000, they're gonna bid it up to a much more respectable amount. Maybe it reaches wholesale, but still that's better than where some of these numbers shook out. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope to do this every once in a while. Bring you some of the bargains that are out there. Now, if you're looking for bargains, I would say, like I just kind of alluded to, go to Kissimmee, Mecum Kissimmee in January, and look at the European cars, specifically the pre-1971 European cars, and hopefully you'll find a great ride there. So, as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, thanks for sharing, and I will talk to all of you next week.